What's up, guys? It's Hump Day, Wednesday, January 22nd. Let's get to another trifecta. Super Bowl in less than 2 weeks, which means we don't really got anything to talk about at this time in football. We're less than 2 months away from March Madness, my favorite time of year. So let's get to it. We're going to see now a lot of teams to talk about. So we're going to pick some teams, we're just going through team by team and see what's going on. I'm going to pick the first one, see what happens. Trifecta number one. All right. San Diego State, let's talk about them. The last undefeated team in the country. They haven't lost. If you've heard about them, maybe you haven't. Kawhi Leonard went there recently, coached by Steve Fisher, the Fab Five in Michigan. He's out. He's got the assistant coach at his times now running the show. I think they're 17, 18-0. They have some good wins. They've beaten Creighton. They've beaten BYU. They've beaten Iowa. They're probably going to go undefeated for the whole season. The conference is a little weak. Kind of reminds me of that St. Joe's team. They were small conference. They went undefeated. I think they're going to go undefeated. They're going to get a 1 seed in the tournament. The way they play really good defense. They got a guy that just made the Wooden finalist list, Malachi Flynn. He's averaging 16 points a game. He's averaging about 5 assists a game. Solid player. They got some bigs on defense. They're not super athletic, but they play a good fundamental system. I don't know that they can keep up with the really athletic Big Five power conference teams. So I'm saying when you look at San Diego State, I think they're going to go undefeated. I think they're going to get a 1 seed. Don't pick them to go to the Final Four. I would say Sweet 16, they may lose in the 1-4-5 matchup. So a team like a Maryland, a team like an Auburn, maybe Kentucky, they match up with. Those teams are way more athletic, are going to give them some problems. Maybe best case scenario, just like St. Joe's back in the day, I would say they go to the Elite Eight, but that's where the road ends. So San Diego State, Kawhi Leonard, I think they're doing a retirement jersey for him in the next week or so. It's pretty exciting, but pretty cool that a small school like that, last team undefeated. So that's trifecta number one. Let's pick up the second one. What should we talk about? Let's see what we got. Baylor. Oh, man. Baylor is the number 1 seed. The number 1 ranked team in the country. So some of you may know this, the last 5 or 6 years, if you pick Baylor in the tournament, they screw you every year. They're a high seed, 3, 4, 5 or whatnot. They lose in the first round half the time. Maybe the second round they get there and they're done. They're coached by Scott Drew. Everybody knows the Drew family. If you got some March Madness history, let's talk about it. Valparaiso, Homer Drew, his son Bryce Drew, 13-4, 14-3 matchup. I think 98-99. Bryce Drew hits a half-court shot against Mississippi State's Eric Dampier team. That's like my love of the tournament. It was great. But let's talk about Baylor. The last 5 years or so, Scott Drew's improving this team, getting his system going. They've always been a great defensive team. They've always been large and in charge. Real physical, grinded out style. They never really had shooters, never really could shoot the three. This team can score, they can play defense, they're sound in a lot of areas, well balanced, but this team really can shoot the three. I'm impressed. I like what I see. They have a couple guys on this team that can really score, and that's the difference from prior years, guys. They've actually beaten a bunch of good teams. They beat Butler. They beat Villanova, our local Nova guys. They beat Texas. They beat Kansas. They're in the Big 12. They're beating all those teams. They're beating Texas Tech. They're beating Oklahoma State. They're beating Oklahoma. They're solid. They're number 1 right now. I can't believe I'm saying this. I know they're number 1. I sound like a homer favorite. It's pretty easy. I think they're the favorite to win the tournament. We'll talk about maybe who I think later, depending on who I pick next in the hat. But I would not be surprised if Baylor wins this year. They're ready. They're definitely Final Four bound. I don't know who's going to match up with them and be able to compete because they're so large, so physical, and yet they can shoot the three. I like what I see. Let's look at the trifecta number 3. What team do we have to talk about now? Oh boy, Kansas. What do we have to say about Kansas? Kansas State the other day, guys, you saw it. They're ranked number 3. They could be a Final Four team as well. Bill Self, I'm not really the biggest fan. But what do we got? Let's talk about the game last night. Kansas wins by 20-some points or so. Game was never in doubt. But with the last play of the game, 10 seconds or so, Kansas trying to dribble out the ball, DeSouza. And what happens? Kansas State's guard steals the ball, goes down the court. Kansas doesn't like it. DeSouza blocks him. And then underneath the basket stands over him, taunting him, saying, "You can't do that to me." So what happens then? After DeSouza gets blocked by the Kansas player, the Kansas State bench gets in his face, and then all pandemonium breaks loose. Both benches come out. DeSouza grabs a chair. McCormick on Kansas comes out. And what does he do? He's throwing punches at some Kansas State players. It gets out of hand. They go into the stands near a handicapped disabled section for the fans. It's just out of control. So what do? I think they just said DeSouza got a 12-game suspension. McCormick gets a 2-game suspension. The Kansas State guys, a couple of them get suspended. Dotson, Azubuike, they weren't out there. They weren't involved, which was good. Azubuike's their monster big. Dotson's their solid guard. They're a solid team. I don't think there's going to be any suspensions that are really going to mess with it. McCormick's an up-and-coming freshman who's a key piece, key role player for that team. But I don't know what's going to happen really. Based on the 2-game suspension that he got, I thought he should have got more than 2. DeSouza gets 12. He should have got the rest of the season, but he doesn't play anyway. It's not going to have any factor. But let's go into it. Let's talk about this issue. So what happens, guys? Unwritten rules in basketball, when the game's over, you don't really do things like that to steal the ball, shoot a 3 in somebody's face. But at the same time, if there's time on the clock, you could still play, and both teams should be ready just, for whatever could happen. So I'm not mad at the Kansas State guy for stealing the ball. And then Kansas felt disrespected, so what do? They keep the play going, and they block the shot, which is pretty smooth, pretty fine. But then the guy, this is when it gets crazy, DeSouza, who in my opinion is a fool, gets in front of the guy and taunts him standing over him. That's when things get out of hand. He's the first one that goes overboard. Kansas State guys come in off the bench, which should never happen. Kansas guys come off the bench. DeSouza grabs a chair. It's unbelievable. He should be suspended for the rest of the year. Let him play next year. Learn his lesson. But Kansas, without any of this, is probably a Final Four team. But with it, maybe Elite Eight. It doesn't look like it's really going to mess up with their mojo. They got a lot of solid guys. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But with Dotson over there, Dotson's the man. He is smooth, guys. Dotson is a fan favorite of mine. Almost as smooth as Pepperidge Farm Milano mint chocolate cookies. I don't know if you guys have ever had these, but these are some solid cookies. Kind of reminds me of it's Girl Scout cookie season, guys. So if you like your Thin Mints, I actually think these are better. So if you go to your local grocery store or Target, you pick up some Milano mint chocolate cookies, you won't be disappointed. So with the Kansas State game, guys, you can't do that. You can't get off the bench. You can't throw a chair. You can't grab a chair. It's crazy. It's bad behavior, bad etiquette. I'm fine with playing out up until the last second, even if the game's over. But you can't taunt a player. You can't throw chairs. You can't throw punches. So that's inexcusable. Bill Self needs to discipline his team, get those guys in check. So that's the trifecta tonight, guys. We got lots of college basketball to talk about over the next couple weeks, couple months leading into the tournament. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of random teams that are in the hat of college basketball, and we'll go from there. Other than that, guys, enjoy the rest of the games this week. We'll talk to you at the end of the week. Have a good one.